Hey book friends, welcome back to the channel. So in today's video, I'm going to be talking about my favorite books. You guys, my favorite books from this past season. So we're talking June, July, August. So what books have I just been loving? So honestly, since joining BookTube, I've been kind of on and off again with like monthly wrap-ups. Sometimes I like to do them, but what I always like to do is gush about books I love. So hence this video. So I'm going to talk about books that maybe you didn't even know I was reading, but I was just loving this summer. So let's just hop in. Let's hop into all of these books. I'm so excited to share some of these with you. So hi, my name is Angie. Welcome to the channel. Welcome back, all of the things. So like I said, we're going to talk through some of my favorite books from summer. Now, I think I should actually just talk about this. I have a number of books here. I read a ton of books. I read like 24 books this past summer, and that is a ton for me, you guys. I don't know who I am. I don't know what happened. It's beyond me. I've slowed down come fall and come like the homeschool season, but I read some really good ones. And what I want to talk about first is what kind of consumed my summer. That's what we'll call it. It consumed my summer. And that was this whole trilogy. Okay, you guys, this is like sci-fi. This is sci-fi. I don't really read a ton of sci-fi, but there's some things about this series that just drew me in, hooked me. I had to keep reading, even though these are all very large, monstrous books. So this series is called The Devoured Worlds by Megan E. O'Keefe. So this is her latest series. I think this one came out last year, and these two came out this year. And so the first one is called The Blighted Stars. And so this is about our two main characters of Naira and Tarquin. Now, at the beginning of this series, they are all kind of in space. Yes, they're in space on a ship, and they're looking to kind of colonize this new planet because in this world, they have been pushed off of Earth and they are kind of exploring and trying to find new habitable planets. And now there's some really interesting things about this world and some of the technology they are using. But that's kind of the core of it. And so Tarquin, one of our main characters, is a son of one of the kind of big ruling families. So there's no like royalty or anything. There's these 5 powerful families in this world, and he is the son of one of them. So he has a lot of power, but he doesn't want it. He has never wanted it. He's very more academic and kind of quiet and not wanting to participate in the things that his family has to do to keep power, right? Okay, so that's his character. He's on this ship, and then something goes wrong, and they end up crash landing on this planet, and there is another character named Naira. Now, Naira is a complicated character, and I don't want to give too much of her story away, but basically she has been like a bodyguard. That is her training, and she has found herself on this planet. So now some of the things I loved. I loved the world. I loved kind of the big overarching story where they need to find a place that's inhabitable, but in this case there's this kind of parasite or fungus that is taking over. Like, it is called the Shroud, if I remember, and it will contaminate a planet and make that planet not usable, because what people are looking for is this kind of rock or mineral called relcatite that basically drives a lot of their technology and their machinery and even their bodies. They have these kind of pathways that have this mineral or whatever it's called, rock, involved with it. And what's really cool technology wise is that they have this ability to kind of save their maps, they call it, which is basically their person, who they are. It almost made me think like they were saving them onto like little discs or something like this, and they could reload that into another body, if you will, and then they're just the same. But yet there's this danger of like, if you do that too many times, your map could crack and you couldn't come back. So that's kind of some of the really interesting parts of this world, and trying to solve this kind of shroud problem and the politics between the families. So now it doesn't necessarily say too much of this, but it says here on the back, to survive, Naira will have to join forces with the handsome heir she's sworn to hate. Now, that's a little hint as to where this might be going, which is a subplot of why I loved this book. Now, I will never call this romantasy. I mean, first off, it is sci-fi, but there is a kind of romantic subplot that I found delightful, that I found was just enough to keep the story going, that I really enjoyed, but was by no means the focus of this book. And that's just like my perfect level. That's my perfect level of the amount of romance I like in books. And so this whole series I just really enjoyed. I enjoyed kind of the initial hook of the first book. I even enjoyed the second book because we learned a whole lot more, and then kind of the overarching story gets taken care of in the third book. I don't want to give too much, but the whole series I thought was so much fun. And I didn't know if I mentioned this, but the second one's called The Fractured Dark, and the third one's called Devoured Worlds. Now, I think I ended up giving the first two 5 stars, and then the third one like 4.5 stars, but like 5 stars, honestly. It wasn't as much of a favorite, but it was just so good. So good. Like, I did not see this whole series coming. I just was like, I'm going to try it. I'm going to try Megan E. O'Keefe. I loved it. So now I have to go see if I like her other work, but I feel like this is my level of sci-fi. And so if you are a sci-fi reader, you could give me more recommendations that kind of line up here. I would love that. I would really appreciate it. But you should just check out the series if that at all interests you. Now that that's like 3 large books that I read this summer, I have some others and a couple large ones. So this one, actually 2 of them were in a vlog. I rarely vlog on this channel, and I vlogged about both of these because they were recommendations from you. So I will put that video above for you to go check out kind of more of my thoughts on that. But I'm going to start with here, The Passage by Justin Cronin. So I had read The Ferryman by Justin Cronin, and I really enjoyed it. I liked his storytelling ability, and I've heard that this was just really interesting and really good and kind of post-apocalyptic, that there's like a super virus or something. So that was what I heard. And this book blew me away in just its scope, and just kind of how big the story was and how interesting the story was, because it really follows a couple main characters, but the main one being Amy. And Amy is said to be the only one who has the power to save the ruined world, because you really start this off with the special agent Wolgast, and he is kind of trying to track down different people for this project, this secret special project that the government is running, and you're not quite sure what's going on. And it feels like they're doing something maybe wrong, and there's like an infection involved, and then it all goes bananas, okay? And then it goes into kind of this world of trying to figure out how to get back, how to kind of climb out of that disaster that maybe the government was behind, right? And it has this kind of cast of characters where Amy's central, but also you have these survivors, these people who are trying to survive this kind of scary thing that now is out there, and they're trying to kind of barricade themselves against it. So it very much has like The Walking Dead vibes, even though I've never seen The Walking Dead. I know basically what it's about. And this is not zombies though, so don't worry about that. But it's really interesting, and I feel like the scope is so big that I am just fascinated by how they're going to solve it, how they're going to figure it out in these next 2 books, because there's 2 more books, The 12 and The City of Mirrors, and they're both large books, dense books, but highly enjoyable. And I actually have them. I picked them up recently. I've actually hauled a number of books, so that might be one of my next videos coming. But I highly recommend The Passage if you haven't read it. It's not like a new book, but it is very interesting. And then the other book I read in that vlog, like I said, is totally different. It's a totally different book, and it's The Frozen River by Ariel Lawhon. So this is a historical fiction book about a woman named Martha. So Martha Ballard, I think, yes, is a midwife in the late 1700s, kind of early America. So we're talking post-Revolutionary War, but still very rough, right? There's still kind of a lot going on, and this woman is raising her family, but also is a midwife, and she also has very strong beliefs in how things should be and how women should be treated, and that's not quite shared by all the men in this town. And so we're following Martha as she is involved in supporting this woman in an alleged rape case that is pointing the finger at one of the kind of powerful men in this town, and what that means and how that plays out. So that's kind of our basis for this story, but I'd say there's so much more to this story that I just really loved. I loved our character of Martha. I thought she was so strong-willed, and she had such like desire to fight back against things that were wrong, but she also had like a really sweet and supportive marriage, and I really liked that part where it just felt like she didn't always make the right calls, and her husband was supportive but yet kind of called her on some of her stuff. And I just kind of really felt their relationship. And then I really liked watching her as she was raising her kids in this day and age and trying to instill values, trying to instill what is right and what is wrong, and what do you do in these certain situations if they arise to your children. And so it was kind of like her interacting with her adult children, like she's done raising them. And so I just felt that was so interesting. There's so many aspects of this that were just slice of life interesting on the backdrop of this just really intense storyline of like justice and what is right and what is wrong, and how people had to really fight against that, and how there was so many scared people that didn't have the courage to really push back against this injustice that was happening. So good. I feel like read this anytime. You don't have to wait till winter. I literally read it in June and it was so good. So I highly recommend you pick this up. So obviously that was a 5-star. And then another book that I just really enjoyed, which you can see already, I was so surprised by this book. And I feel like this is hit or miss for people, right? Some people are like, I don't get it. I don't understand what's so interesting about this book. But it's First Lie Wins by Ashley Elston. Now, I don't usually give 5 stars to thrillers. I just don't. I feel like it's a totally different genre. It's a very entertaining genre to read, but it's not usually a 5-star one for me. What this is about, it's about a girl named Evie Porter, and she has kind of an assignment. You know that from the beginning. So she's pretending to be this woman with her boyfriend and his friends in this kind of rich area of the South. Her boyfriend, Ryan Sumner, is her mark, and that was the assignment given by Mr. Smith, right? Okay. And so you're following this and you're getting kind of back flashes to how did she become this person, because you really don't know if she's like part of the good guys or the bad guys, if she's like a con artist or if she's like undercover FBI. You don't know why she has this life where she has to pretend for her job, right? And it's so very interesting because as the story goes along and you really paint some of her backstory, you're like questioning a lot of things. And then in her current day, she's questioning a lot of things and you're just trying to like figure out what's going on. And I loved that. I thought the suspense was there while she was kind of, things were maybe falling a little bit apart or they weren't going as per normal. So there was suspense, but also how it wrapped up in the end, I thought was really clever. I really liked being able to look back and be like, oh, that makes sense. Oh, I see. Oh, it's like that to me, clever is really fun. And I also do kind of like spy books, even though this isn't necessarily a spy book. It has a similar feelings. And so I really enjoyed it. I really enjoyed it. And so I don't want to say too much more. I feel like you could easily spoil books like this, but if any of that sounded good and you haven't read First Lie Wins, pick it up. It's really, really fun. Okay, the other thing I want to highlight from this past summer is the Inheritance Games trilogy. They're in the wrong order. By Jennifer Lynn Barnes. Now, this is a reread for me. I gushed about this maybe 2 years ago on this channel. I read them all. I love them all. I read them as they come out, but we are doing a read-along in a Patreon that I am a part of, which is always linked below because I really love Gwen's Patreon. And it has been so fun to reread these books. To get back into the story of Avery and the Hawthorne brothers, because this whole trilogy starts with Avery as she's kind of down on her luck, and then she gets a call that she's summoned to a will reading of like a billionaire from Texas. And she doesn't know who it is, but she shows up and she's like, oh, I could use a little bit of cash, right? And then she ends up getting left the whole estate. And his actual like grandsons and children have been kind of disinherited, but it doesn't end there. There are puzzles and clues and all of these games and mysteries to answer kind of questions like, why? Why was Avery given all this money? I just love it. I love this whole series. It's so much fun, and we're going to keep reading some of the new books coming out. And so anyway, that was a highlight from this summer. And then I do have a couple more 4-star reads, but still so good. And I highly, highly recommend them. And okay, I'm gonna start with one that it can be a bit polarizing. I know that because I know that like Stuart Turton in and of himself is a polarizing author. So I read The Last Murder at the End of the World. I really enjoyed it. I enjoyed the ride. I thought it was really fun. You definitely have to give Stuart Turton time to develop his world and his characters and the plot. I feel like there's a lot of complaints that it's just slow and boring. I disagree. I feel like the way he crafts his stories and the way he reveals certain things and how you're kind of second guessing things and trying to predict what is actually happening is so much fun. And a lot of times it's a little bit more complicated or out there than maybe surface level. And that to me is so fun and so clever. And so basically it's about this island. It's like post-apocalyptic. Also, it's kind of this like the world ended. There's this big fog that wiped everybody out. And there's just like this little utopia that's protected by this dome on this island where there's a line of where the fog is. And if you go into the fog, you die, sort of idea. And these people who are on the island are protected by the scientists who have developed this dome and kept it safe, except one of the scientists has been found dead on the beach. And that has started this clock of trying to figure out why. And our main character is strangely inquisitive. A lot of the people on this island are a little bit more accepting and like thankful of like the protection, and she's just a little bit more, but why is this happening? And I love that kind of a character. I love that character. It has like almost a detective-y feel to her and her personality, and she pushes back and asks questions when other people are just not going to do that. And how it all plays out is so fun. It was fun to kind of predict along the way. And so I recommend it if you haven't read it and you want to give Stuart Turton a try. I mean, I think I still enjoyed The 7.5 Deaths of Evelyn Hardcastle more, but this is so good. It was so much fun. I also read the next installment in the Robin Hobb series, The Realm of the Elderlands, right? So this is the second book in the Tawny Man series. We're back to Fitz and the Fool, and just telling a little bit more about his story. It's so hard to talk about these books when I'm like, this is book 8 in the whole world, but it's like book 5 in the Fitz world. It's hard to explain, but really what I felt like this book did is it continued the story from the first book in the Tawny Man trilogy in a very entertaining way, especially if you really love Fitz and the Fool like I do, and you really love these characters and you want to kind of a little bit more information about the world and where they fit in and some of the judgmental people and kind of the things that are going on. It's hard to explain. I mean, Fitz in and of himself, from the very first books, he was dropped off at the castle of Buckkeep when he was like 6 years old. He's the bastard son of the prince in waiting, or the king in waiting at that time, and then he had to kind of grow up as a bastard, if you will, but yet still of royal blood. He still was a part of the Farseer line, and there's this magic in here that has to do with the skill magic and also the wit magic, and there's the skill magic is more accepted and respected, and the wit magic is not. The wit has to do more with animals, and the skill has to, well, it's hard to explain. But it feels like the Tawny Man series goes a little bit more into explaining the wit magic, and it's so good. I mean, I obviously can't say more than I really enjoy the character work, I really enjoy the world, I really enjoy the fact that Robin Hobb doesn't like pull punches, that you really feel it with these characters. And then the last 4-star that I want to talk about that I also really enjoyed was the latest Ruth Ware, and it's One Perfect Couple. So this was just really fun. It was a fun, fast-paced thriller book, suspense book. It was about this couple, Lila and Nico, who are not married, but they've been together and dating for 2 years. He wants to be an influencer or like become an actor or something like that. So he thinks this is his big break to be on this reality TV show that focuses on couples and figuring out who's the best couple at the end of the whole show, sort of idea. She's a little reluctant to go, but he really needs it for his career, so she agrees. They end up on this island and things just start going poorly. And I really enjoyed kind of the ride. I enjoyed the ride. That's the best word for it. I enjoyed kind of the suspense of what was happening, the suspense of like, how are they going to get out of this? The suspense of like, who can be trusted? All of that was super fun. Now, I've heard some complaints where people didn't like the end. I really enjoyed it. I feel like the whole ride of the book made it 4 stars for me. I enjoy Ruth Ware's writing. And so if you haven't picked this up and you like kind of reality TV, it's really good. Even though I don't watch any reality TV, but I still highly enjoyed this book. So either way, I guess. And so that kind of concludes my summer. My gosh, I really enjoyed it. I read other books, like I said, that didn't make it on this list, but you know, if this many were favorites from the 24 books I read, I am so happy with my reading this summer, and so happy with what I picked up. It's just such a mishmash of genres and a mishmash of like very character-driven books or like plot-driven books and just fast-paced thrillers. So anyway, you guys, that's my summer. I'm very excited for fall, obviously, but I'm so happy with what I read this summer. So let me know down below if you have any standouts from this summer. It doesn't have to be a summer type book, but any books you read this past summer that you just loved. let me know, because obviously some of your recommendations landed really well with me, and so I will always take your guys' recommendations. But anyway, that is all that I have, and if you made it this far in the video and don't have anything to say but want to let me know you were here, let's come up with an emoji. Let's do an island emoji. I think there is one. A beach, a boat, something like that, something to do with this book. It's definitely a beautiful book, and yeah, so that's what I have, and I hope you all are doing well. And if you like the video, give it a thumbs up and subscribe if you want to. But otherwise, you guys, I'll see you in the next book video. All right, take care.